Good morning everyone. Today in this video we will fight against the advanced character of our world around us, as we always tend to do in every video of this channel. Today we will talk about one book published in this year, but by one of my favorite Polish writers, Waldemar Wysiak, who is known as a very good specialist in Napoleonic era, art historian, as well as political commentator with conservative point of view. So Mr. Wysiak wrote and published this year biography of one of the three main Polish national bards, 19th century poet who lived in 1809 to 1849, Juliusz Słowacki, very good poet and also very good and very effective womanizer. Why Mr. Wysiak wrote his biography in this way, that he focused in the first part of the book on the relations between a woman and one of the most important national bard of Poland, Juliusz Słowacki. Because in the interwar periods between First and Second World War, some literature critics and literature historians spread rumors that most likely, because he was never married, Juliusz Słowacki had some problems with his sexuality. Some people suggested that maybe he didn't have any sexual drive, or maybe he was more attracted to men. Actually, reading his memories, his letters to mother, and the memories of people who interacted with him, one can easily conclude that Mr. Słowacki was actually womanizer who never improved, and he was not picky among his lovers who were rotating around him, and he was rotating them, and once they were rotating him, they were practicing together parallel lines very often. Among the ladies were ladies of Polish origin, of Western European origin, and so on. So Mr. Słowacki didn't have any bias towards the ethnicity of his lovers, which is good. And he had many of them. The most important of them, and the relations between them and the great poet, are briefly described, but nicely, with a sense of humor and irony, by Mr. Wysiak. Second part of the book is also very important because it's dedicated to the issue of Mr. Towiański, Andrzej Towiański, and his relations with two out of three main Polish bards of 19th century. Second one, who was actually possessed intellectually and mentally for long by the sectarian Mr. Andrzej Towiański, was Adam Mickiewicz, actually a rival of Mr. Słowacki, and gentlemen didn't like each other, with the exception of short episode when two guys tend to think that they started liking each other when they were members of the Mr. Towiański sect. But Mr. Słowacki was not a Russophile. He didn't like Tsarish regime in Russia. That's why after a short episode in his life with the sect of Mr. Towiański, he left this really suspicious company. But Mr. Mickiewicz, Adam Mickiewicz, the first greatest Polish national bard, was under the influence of this agent of Tsarish Russia for long. And Mr. Wysiak proves, in my opinion, beyond any doubts, that this sectarian and activist on the Polish emigration after November uprising in 1831, that Mr. Towiański, Andrzej Towiański, was the agent of the Tsarish secret service, whose main goal was to introduce divisions and arguments in between the Polish emigration in France, not to make larger problems to Tsarish regime from outside. And unfortunately for the Polish case, Mr. Andrzej Towiański did his job as a Tsarish agent really well, and Polish emigration of Polish noblemen and intellectuals who fled after the fall of the November uprising from 1831 was completely divided. Its influence on the international politics weakened thanks to this division, and arguments between the members of Great Emigration were really strong, and divisions were really deep, unfortunately. But thanks to reading the second part of this biography of Mr. Słowacki, by Waldemar Wysiak, one can really nicely see how Tsarish agents were acting in making the communities and organizations outside Russia weaker and divided, and their members arguing with each other to minimize their influence on Russia. It's actually very good example why Russia has so many influences even now among many countries that are potentially much stronger than this country, because these tactics didn't change, and Russia didn't change its actions. It invests a lot in agents, secret service, to introduce mass into the communities that can act against it. Action Trust is also a great example that Bolsheviks used the same strategy as Tsarish intelligence services were using against the White Russia elite in the Western Europe after Bolsheviks came to power in 1920s, to introduce deep divisions within these circles, and they succeeded. That's why they kept power in Soviet Union for 70 years, and actually their descendants are still keeping the power in Russia. Mr. Putin and his regime is the best example. Okay, so this is the book I read recently. I really recommend it, and the title is Mr. Juliusz. It's the allusion to Mr. Tadeusz, Polish national epic written by Adam Mickiewicz, the challenger of the rival of Mr. Słowacki. That's why I really recommend this book, because it shows a second Polish national bard in different lights, shows his real personality as really a womanizer who can never got rid of his vice, not asexual or homosexual person as some people claim, and shows really nicely life of emigration of Polish intellectuals and how it was weakened by the actions of Russian secret service. Very interesting book, Mr. Juliusz by Mr. Waldemar Wysiak. All the best, bye.